just for a moment, imagine a universe awash with life, where we humans are not the only intelligent beings around. What might these alien races look like? Could we communicate with them, or even recognize them as intelligent? And what would they make of our violent and dangerous species? Might they take one peep and decide not to bother with such primitive beings? A planetary nursery filled with spiteful galactic infants. On the other hand, in our imaginary scenario, they may enrich us with scientific knowledge beyond our imagination. Or could an encounter with aliens have a more destructive outcome? It could be a bad day for humankind. But relax. It's just make-believe. It could never happen. Could it? Welcome to our home, the Milky Way. Our sun is just one of a few 100 billion stars in this galaxy. Feeling small and insignificant yet? Now think of not just one, but billions and billions of galaxies. And you have the universe. But how big is the universe? It's impossible to measure it in terms of miles. The numbers would be meaningless. Instead, distances in space are measured in light years. That's the distance light travels in 1 year. And the speed light travels is about 186,000 miles per second. Try working that out on a calculator. To save you the trouble, 1 light year is a distance of nearly 6 trillion miles. Light takes 100,000 years just to cross our galaxy. That means every time we look up at the stars, we are looking back in time. It takes millions and millions of years for light to reach us from other galaxies. And light from the farthest regions of the universe takes billions of years. What we are seeing are events that occurred before the Earth even existed, when the universe was in its infancy. So with such an immense piece of real estate, it's no surprise to learn that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on every beach and desert on planet Earth. So what are the chances of us being the only kids on the block?
It would be bizarre if we were the only ones.
Are we alone? No.
After thousands of years thinking that we are unique, scientists are making some astonishing discoveries here on Earth, in our solar system, and in deep space. Some scientists now believe that we are just a few years away from our first contact.
We'll know we're not alone between the year 2020 and the year 2025. This will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest story of all time.
And what will he or she look like? Will they even be a he or a she? Or could we have already had a close encounter of the third kind? Some people believe that aliens have visited us in the past. If they do contact us, one of the greatest scientific minds of all time has a dire warning for the human race. Professor Stephen Hawking may be suffering from motor neuron disease, but he holds the Lucasian Chair at Cambridge University, a post once held by Isaac Newton. When Stephen Hawking speaks, the scientific world listens.
The history of advanced races, meaning more primitive people on this planet, is not very happy, and they were the same species. I think it would be a disaster.
Many scientists accept that Hawking's gut feeling is a valid scenario. But human nature is to be inquisitive. It's highly unlikely we'd turn down the opportunity of making contact with an alien race, no matter how dangerous it could prove to be. And today, the thought of life on another planet is no longer just the stuff of pulp novels and Hollywood fantasy. For some of the best minds in astronomy, it's starting to look like a near certainty. Naked Science asks why scientists are now so confident that we are not alone. In all of human history, we had never seen a planet beyond the 9 in our own solar system, a tiny part of this vast universe. But in 1995, the discovery of a planet some 40 light years from Earth, 51 Peg B, rocked the scientific world. Another planet, another solar system, another neighborhood in the vastness of space. Since that day, rapidly advancing telescopes and computers have discovered more than 100 other planets. And we know we have only begun to scratch the surface. The universe is huge beyond our ability to comprehend it. But with our new search tools, we can see more of the objects and activity within it. There are almost certainly millions of other planets out there. Naked Science travels to the Lick Observatory to meet Deborah Fisher from San Francisco State University. She's one of a new breed of scientist, a planet hunter. Thanks to Fisher and a few other astronomers in this field, we now know of over 130 planets outside our solar system.
I find it incredibly humbling to now realize that our sun is really quite common, has a system of planets like other stars have. A lot of people would like to think that we're very special and unique, but I think it's very natural and comforting that this is the way the universe is made.
But how do you discover planets light years away from Earth? Deborah Fisher monitors distant stars, watching their motion. If there is a planet orbiting a star, it will exert a slight gravitational pull on the star. Fisher can measure that gravitational wobble billions of miles away, down to a few feet per second. An amazing achievement. But the planets she's finding are all giant planets more like our own Saturn. For life to exist, a planet has to match a tough set of criteria. From studying our solar system, scientists suggest that small rocky planets offer the best chances for life as we know it. Chemicals, the building blocks of life, need something to grip onto, and a solid surface allows that to happen. A planet has to be the right size, too. Much smaller than the size of the Earth, its gravity won't be strong enough to preserve the atmosphere. It would just escape into space. It's not just size. Equally important is location. A planet has to be near enough its sun for liquid water to exist. As far as we know, liquid water is essential for every form of life. Too near the sun, like Venus, where the surface temperature is a broiling 864 degrees Fahrenheit, the water would just boil away. Too far away, and water freezes. But on Earth, liquid water is everywhere. More than 2/3 of the surface is covered with it.
We want to find planets that might harbor life. We want to find planets that are at a distance from the star, where it's not so hot that water is vaporized, not so cold that water is just locked up in ice, but just right, the Goldilocks zone, where water exists in puddles.
And in June 2004, European scientists found the smallest planet yet outside our solar system. It's just 14 times the size of Earth and may have a rocky surface, a kind of super Earth. And where you have a rocky surface, there might be liquid water. Scientists think that this is the largest a rocky planet can be. Any bigger, and it would collapse. It's 50 light years away in the southern constellation Altair. It's one of 3 planets orbiting around a sun much like ours. But the discovery of smaller Earth-sized planets will require a leap of technology, and it's already being built. The space telescope, the Kepler Observatory, is expected to launch in 2007. The mission will survey thousands of our nearest stars. When a planet crosses between a star and the telescope, the size of the planet can be determined by measuring the amount of starlight it blocks. Scientists are optimistic they'll find at least 50 Earth-sized planets within 10 years of the Kepler telescope's launch. There is one group of scientists who've been looking for signs of alien life for over 20 years. We next travel to the SETI Institute in California, the birthplace of alien hunting. SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and this is where some of the best minds in the world are engaged in a complex, sophisticated, long-term endeavor. We meet Seth Shostak, the Institute's senior astronomer. He's dedicated most of his professional life to searching for alien intelligence.
My personal interest, of course, in SETI, I think that goes back to my childhood. I can remember when I was 10 years old buying these books about flying saucers.
Shostak and his colleagues are searching for aliens by listening to the radio. It may seem basic, but radio is a powerful source of communication. Radio signals are energy waves, radiating out in every direction. As well as reaching your radio and TV sets, the signals also leak into space, and they have been doing that for the last 70 to 100 years.
I have a dream today.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The Lucy Show.
Oh, you must think I'm a perfect idiot.
Let's just hope our programs haven't put off any listening aliens. These radio waves are traveling outwards at the speed of light. It takes just over a second for a signal to reach the moon from Earth. Sounds fast, but given the interstellar distances involved, even the speed of light ends up seeming like snail mail. If we receive a message from the other side of our galaxy tomorrow, it would have been sent 100,000 years ago. That long ago on Earth, some early ancestors of ours were taking their first steps. 100,000 years later, we've at last become advanced enough to listen out for a message from the stars. But where is the best place to try? The answer? Arecibo in Puerto Rico, home to one of the world's largest radio telescopes. The Arecibo dish sits in a giant natural crater. It's a monumental 1,000 feet in diameter. This dish is so sensitive, it could pick up a cell phone as far away as Jupiter. Since 1997, Arecibo has been home to Project Phoenix, the SETI Institute scan of about 1,000 stars similar to our Sun within 200 light years of Earth. That's the cosmic equivalent of just looking in your backyard. But the search has to start somewhere. Millions of radio channels are scanned simultaneously. The universe is alive with radio noise, a sort of galactic white noise. But these signals, dramatic as they may be, are random natural events. SETI's electronic ears are tuned to hear signals made on purpose, signals that indicate life, something that stands out. A voice calling out through the background chaos of space.
It would be a constant tone or a slowly varying tone, sort of like a flute tone, a very pure tone actually, in a sea of noise. I guess you could say it would be like playing a flute note while standing next to a waterfall.
Naturally occurring signals are spread across a broad part of the spectrum. But an artificial transmission like a TV picture or radio broadcast is squeezed into a tiny part of the radio dial, a narrow band signal.
We're just looking for the kind of signal that would tell us that somebody has built a transmitter. We're just looking for the evidence that their transmitter is on.
After 40 years of listening out for a message, we've heard nothing. But this kind of search could take years. At the moment, we're just taking our first tentative steps. But is there anything else we can do? Naked Science next looks at a new form of interstellar communication. A light so bright, it burns 1 million times brighter than our sun. We've learned that our galaxy is just one of billions in the universe. Scientists are now discovering new planets and solar systems. But so far, we've been waiting patiently for a message. If there are any aliens out there, it seems they've maintained radio silence. But maybe they're trying to contact us some other way. Naked Science next travels to Berkeley in California, Krishna Telescope, to meet Dan Wertheimer, an alien hunter for the last 25 years.
There are 200 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy and billions of galaxies, so it would be bizarre if we're the only ones.
He's not listening. He's looking for a sign in the sky.
Yeah.
Wertheimer heads up one of Berkeley's optical SETI programs.
Wow, so there's another one. So there's a lot of weird things happening that night.
His team is searching for a very bright flash in the sky, a pulse that may only last for 1 billionth of a second. The most powerful lasers here on Earth can produce a light 1 million times brighter than our sun. Wertheimer believes that using a laser may be the way that aliens try to catch our attention. He thinks that aliens might use lasers to transmit a signal, something like Morse code, turning the laser on and off in short bursts.
The advantage of optical signals is that they're very directional. They could contain a huge of information. They could send us their whole Library of Congress, all their music, poetry, literature, science, medicine. Perhaps they tell us how to get on the galactic internet, communicating with civilizations all throughout the galaxy.
But how do the scientists tell the difference between starlight and artificial light? A laser light flashing for just 1 billionth of a second would deliver to the telescope up to 10 particles of light, called photons.
And that's very rare from a star. Even a bright star, you don't get so many photons coming into your telescope in 1 billionth of a second.
The team monitor each star for a minute, and then move on to the next one if there is no flash. 10,000 stars have now been scanned, but so far, Dan Wertheimer has yet to see the light.
But I'm optimistic in the long run because the technology is changing so fast. The telescopes are getting better, the detectors are getting better. We'll look at more and more stars. Eventually we'll look at hundreds of millions of stars. We're going to be doing a sky survey of the galactic plane. So right now Earthlings are kind of in a primitive state. We're just learning how we might communicate with ET.
There was a moment back in the 1960s when Nobel Prize-winning British scientist Professor Anthony Hewish found what might have been an alien transmission. From what looked more like a series of clotheslines and a radio receiver, he and his team started to detect a regular series of pulses about a second apart.
What was absolutely amazing about this signal was that it was a succession of sharp pulses, as if what we were looking at was a star just simply flashing. Well, astronomical bodies don't do that. One possibility, obviously, of getting artificial signals from outer space is that you're dealing with something intelligent. And jokingly, we call them LGM signals, little green men out there. I don't think anybody seriously believed that, but it was a possibility, quite clearly.
There were no little green men to be found anywhere. Hewish soon realized that what he'd found came from a natural source. It was the signature of a dead star called a neutron star. These dead stars spin at high speed, sending out pulses like a lighthouse beam. So if they haven't sent us a message, maybe we should get in touch with them. Over 30 years ago, NASA did just that by mailing a letter to the stars from all of us. In 1972, the space agency launched Pioneer 10. After visiting Jupiter, the probe journeyed out into deep space. Today, it's 8 billion miles from Earth, heading for the red star Aldebaran in the constellation Taurus. The spacecraft is due to reach its destination in a mere 2 million years. If there's anyone home on any nearby planet, they'll find a plaque on the side of the craft. A greeting card from Earth, showing the location of planet Earth and a picture of what we look like. The symbol for hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, is also depicted. But there is another spacecraft even further away. Voyager 1 is now the most distant man-made object in the solar system. At some 9 billion miles from Earth, Voyager 1 is about to leave our solar system, destined to wander the stars of the Milky Way, perhaps forever. If Voyager should encounter any alien beings, it too carries a greeting. A gold-plated phonographic record attached to the side of the probe contains images, natural sounds, and music from Earth.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Symbolic images explain how to play the record and where it comes from. If we were to wait until some alien finds one of the space probes and replies, it could take millions of years. But why are the scientists so positive that there are other intelligent beings in the galaxy? It's a simple case of numbers, very large numbers. It's estimated there are at least 70,000 million stars in the universe. The big question is how many of those could be home to advanced life? Back in 1961, the father of SETI science, Frank Drake, came up with an equation for calculating how many alien civilizations there could be in our own galaxy able to contact us. Drake asked how many stars are there capable of supporting planets with intelligent life, and then how many planets would have radio technology, and how long do the civilizations with such technology last.
One of the problems, of course, with the Drake equation is that we can't actually solve it, if you will. I mean, we don't know the values of many of the terms. And if there's even one term in that equation that you really don't know at all, then the end result is an answer that you don't know at all.
Nevertheless, many scientists believe that even when the most conservative numbers are punched into the equation, you still come out with many intelligent civilizations in our galaxy alone. But that raises a question, one that was highlighted as long ago as 1950 by physicist Enrico Fermi. In what became known as Fermi's paradox, he asked, where is everybody? If our galaxy is so crowded, why haven't we heard from anyone? For an answer, we traveled to Denver, Colorado, to meet planetary scientist David Grinspoon. He's an advisor to NASA on space exploration strategy and has studied the search for alien life for 15 years.
Are we alone? No. We're not alone. I'm sure there are other species and other life and even, I would say, other civilizations out there. It's not something I have direct evidence for, but I feel like I have a lot of indirect evidence in terms of everything I understand about how we got to be here on Earth and everything I understand about what seems to be going on in the rest of the universe.
Grinspoon has come up with what he calls the seedling hypothesis. His analogy is that the universe is like a forest full of mature trees and exotic creatures. We Earthlings are just tiny seedlings. Perhaps someday we'll grow into something interesting, but right now we're not even noticeable. It may be, but we might just not be important enough.
Maybe they're just not that interested in us. In a universe with perhaps all kinds of creatures and civilizations, we're very new to the scene. We haven't necessarily accomplished that much or done that much to distinguish us for somebody who's really been around a long time.
But there may be a better answer to Fermi's paradox: the sheer size of space. Even for a smarter-than-average alien, the laws of physics are a major stumbling block to interstellar travel. A century ago, Einstein figured out that faster-than-speed of light travel was impossible. To break the speed of light barrier requires an infinite amount of energy. And even if alien spacecraft could approach the speed of light, scientists suggest that for every pound a spacecraft weighed, 1 billion pounds of fuel would be needed. And traveling around the galaxy at anything less than the speed of light would take millions and millions of years. But maybe aliens will be content to travel around at more modest speeds. Perhaps they live longer than us, Even on Earth, there are life forms that survive far longer than us. The Californian redwood trees can live for 2,000 years.
The fallacy is in thinking that other advanced species would care that something couldn't be done in a human lifetime. What if you let the trip take 1,000 years or 10,000 years? I think there's a chauvinism, a temporal chauvinism, where if something can't be done in 100 years or a couple hundred years, then it's impossible.
But perhaps we suffer from environmental chauvinism as well, finding it hard to imagine how life could survive in strange conditions, and yet some of the strangest environments can be found here on Earth. Next, Naked Science descends into one of the deepest caves in the U.S. and comes face to face with an organism that lives in total darkness and survives by eating rocks. We've learned that scientists believe advanced life could exist elsewhere in the universe. So far, we have no proof. But scientists are making startling new discoveries. They're finding microscopic life forms in the most inhospitable places, right here on Earth. If life can flourish in the most extreme conditions here, the possibility of it taking hold elsewhere in the galaxy seems much more likely. But even if we do find evidence of microbial life infinitely less intelligent than us, why should we care? Microbes can't tell us the secrets of the universe. They can't talk to us. Planetary scientist David Grinspoon thinks any such discovery would be of huge significance.
If we find microbial life anywhere in our own solar system, that implies a very fertile universe. It implies that making life is something that planets do, and that implies that there are intelligent species out there in great number, some of whom will want to talk to us.
Meet astrobiologist Penny Boston. She spends her life in some of the darkest, most hostile places on Earth. She's looking for extremophiles, microbes that can thrive in places that would kill most other creatures.
What we're doing in extreme environments on Earth is really trying to write a field guide to microorganisms on planets that we've never been, for organisms that we don't even know exists yet.
Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico. These are some of the deepest caves in America. What could possibly exist down here in zero sunlight? The lights may be off, but somebody's in.
Sure nothing's grown up on them.
Penny Boston has found microbes that nourish themselves by literally chomping their way through solid rock. Rock eaters.
These are the organisms that manage to liberate small quantities of material from the rock itself. That is, they chemically react to these. And during that reaction, they get energy from that process. And that's the energy that provides the foundation of their life. And so they then use that energy just as we eat food at the dinner table. And so their ability to survive in an environment that is essentially food-free is one of the things that we are focusing on the most intensely.
And it's not just in deep cave systems that these extremophile microbes are thriving. This is Mono Lake in California. It may look beautiful, but the salt levels are 3 times greater than in seawater. It's poisonous to humans, but it's teeming with microbial life. And extremophiles can survive extreme cold, too. This is the Fox Tunnel in Alaska, an extremely cold environment. But amazingly, even here, there are microorganisms in the permafrost that can stay frozen for millions of years. And they are still alive. By warming them up, scientists have been able to revive these dormant organisms.
As much as we can stretch our imaginations in every conceivable direction of the limits of life, that makes us better and better prepared to recognize life when we see it wherever we find it elsewhere in our solar system and ultimately beyond.
So what we need is an interplanetary field trip to search for microbial life. Next, we travel to the largest moon of Saturn, Titan. It's the only moon in the solar system with an atmosphere. Titan has an orange haze surrounding it, This haze could be concealing carbon-rich lakes and oceans, and possibly life.
2, 1, liftoff of the Cassini spacecraft.
Right now, Titan remains unexplored, but a NASA mission will change all that. The spacecraft Cassini blasted off from Earth in 1997. When it reaches Titan, a probe will descend into the atmosphere at nearly 4 miles a second. Titan is about half the size of Earth, but its atmosphere is 4 times as dense, and the temperature is a distinctly chilly -290 degrees Fahrenheit. If the probe survives its landing, it will radio its data some 700 million miles across space back to Earth. Scientists think that Titan could be rich in organic chemicals that would have been common on primitive Earth when our own life began. Maybe that means there are microbes here too. An even more inhospitable world for life is Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. At first glance, it looks like a dead, frozen landscape. The entire surface is concealed by a layer of ice, but a closer look reveals something amazing. Photographs taken by the Galileo probe revealed multiple crisscrossing lines covering this icy world. There's only one in the solar system with similar features: the frozen Arctic seas on Earth, where the ice floats on water and is constantly moving. That makes scientists believe there is a chance that underneath the icy surface of Europa could be a vast liquid ocean. But what's keeping the ocean from freezing totally? It could be kept liquid by the huge forces on the moon. Europa is being pulled in different directions by the gravitational forces of Jupiter and the other moons around the planet. These tidal forces heat up the moon's core, enough to keep the ocean around it liquid. Eventually, NASA hopes to probe even further into Europa's mysteries. One idea is to send an orbiter that would scan the surface to confirm whether there is indeed an ocean below the ice. Once an orbiter locates a thin spot in the ice, it may be able to send down a robotic probe looking for life in the water below. The Hydrobot could then send back digital pictures as it scours the ocean. It may find hotspots on the ocean floor, called hydrothermal vents. These cracks in the ground spout warm, nutrient-rich water. On Earth, these vents are home to many simple life forms. Perhaps the Hydrobot could find Europa as fertile as our ocean floor. Might our nearest aliens be living here? But the best candidate for past or present life in our solar system is Mars. In recent years, an armada of spacecraft has been sent to Mars. NASA's Mars rover mission has found evidence of volcanic activity, wind effects, and most importantly, indications in the veins of some rocks that sometime in the past, Mars did have water underground in liquid form. And where there is water on Earth, there is life. So many scientists believe it's possible Mars did at one time host some form of life. Scientists believe, with the evidence they've gathered from our planet and the solar system, that life exists elsewhere in the universe. But what might such creatures look like? Next, Naked Science meets the aliens. We've learned there may be water elsewhere in our solar system. We've seen evidence of life forms we had no idea could exist here on Earth. Now, Naked Science asks, what could alien beings look like? For years, Hollywood's version of an alien was to put a suit on a person. But now, with computer graphics becoming more and more sophisticated, designers are no longer constrained by the human form and really use their imaginations. Joel Hagen from Modesto, California, is a designer who's worked for NASA as an imagery specialist.
It's so easy to think that the human form, that our own form, is the ideal form for an intelligent being. I think that this is just part of the inevitable anthropocentric view that we have of things. And as we try to think of what an intelligent creature would look like, it generally winds up looking kind of like ourselves, with hands, eyes, ears, a head, and walking around. The idea for this one would be a fairly low-gravity planet, so I gave him some long, fairly spindly legs. I was envisioning sort of a jungle environment. This kind of odd scissor-like appendage that I've given it here, it has the ability actually to completely crouch down if there are strong winds, or scissor itself up very high to be able to work with things in its environment.
Back on Earth, there are many who believe we don't need to go looking on other planets to find evidence of alien intelligence. One survey found that over half the population of the United States believes that we have been visited by alien beings. Is there any possibility that they're right? We next traveled to Wiltshire in England, where strange things began to happen to the wheat fields one summer. The crop circle phenomenon was born. Some believed that these intricate patterns were landing sites of alien spacecraft. Others suggested they may be messages left by extraterrestrials, or navigation devices made and used by aliens. It's even been suggested they may be created by powerful winds, and to give the theory credibility, it's been called the plasma vortex theory. John Lundberg has another explanation. They're just hoaxes. And how does he know? Because he's one of the world's leading circle makers. He and his team are responsible for some of the most complex and sophisticated crop circles ever seen.
We wanted to create circles that were so big and so complex that people would once again question that these things are man-made.
And to prove once and for all they are made by humans, Lundberg has agreed to create for Naked Science our very own crop circle. This circle will take about 90 minutes to create. First, he marks out the circumference of his circle. He uses a 300-foot surveyor's tape to measure out the pattern. The design is worked out in advance on computer. The crop circler's secret weapon is a stalk stomper, a 4-foot plank of wood they use to flatten the crop. And there's not a single alien in sight. But even though Lundberg openly demonstrates the secrets behind crop circles, there are a few diehards who still believe that these are alien in origin.
The formation that we've created here has actually been made in daylight. And so the researchers would say that this is not the correct kind of test conditions, because obviously we've got daylight, which enables us to make the circle easier. And obviously these are things that they put forward as being part of the genuine article.
It's not just crop circles that have been thought to be signs of alien visitation. Here in the Peruvian desert, about 250 miles south of Lima, is a plain covering nearly 200 square miles. It contains a series of perfectly straight lines. This grand geometric form is on a scale so large, it can only be truly appreciated from the air. The longest line goes 9 miles across the plain. In and around the lines are strange symbols and pictures of beasts. Archaeologists believe that these lines date back to 200 BC. The forms are so difficult to see from the ground. It wasn't until the 1930s that aircraft surveying for water were able to make them out. So how did they get there, and what are they there for? The Swiss writer Erich von Däniken made his fortune by suggesting this was a giant landing strip for alien spacecraft. The only trouble with that theory is the desert floor here is soft earth and loose stone, hardly suitable for landing any heavy aircraft or flying saucers. So if it's not a private airstrip for alien visitors, what is it? Most researchers think that it's some form of giant site of worship. The straight lines may be pathways linking a series of shrines, and the figures were probably not meant for human eyes, but for their gods. But for those who seriously believe we've been visited, this is the ultimate proof: an unidentified flying object, or UFO. The first modern-day UFO was spotted in 1947 near Mount Rainier, Washington. It was described as a saucer skipping over water, and from that description, the flying saucer was born.
You and your women can give us life, and what we want, we take.
The myth was fed by a series of sci-fi movies, and the belief that aliens had visited us in flying saucers just grew and grew. Even as late as 1996, a poll conducted in the United States showed that nearly 3/4 of the population believe that the government is covering up information about UFOs. And this is the possible reason why. The supposed UFO crash at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 has entered American folklore. For many, it was the ultimate conspiracy theory. An alien spacecraft crashes in the desert, and alien bodies are removed from the crash site to be examined by autopsy. All this is covered up by the government and remains top secret to this day. The truth? Something did crash in the desert and there were bodies, but it wasn't alien in origin. It was a high-altitude military balloon test. The bodies that eyewitnesses claimed to have seen were dummies. But how do we explain away the countless UFO sightings and filmed evidence? Once again, Naked Science enlists the expert skills of hoaxbuster John Lundberg.
We've used a kind of technique that undoubtedly has been used by many people in the past to perpetrate UFO hoaxes. And it simply is a matter of building a small-scale model and then having that suspended on a rig and a bit of fishing wire so we can actually have the craft up in the sky with the surrounding clouds and sky and a landscape. And to be honest, it's quite easy to do. It's not difficult to achieve.
And then, with some clever manipulation on his laptop, Lundberg produces the perfect UFO picture. But there are always some people who will never be convinced that such pictures are the work of hoaxers.
If you are coming forward and showing that you've actually perpetrated a hoax, you're immediately seen by that community as a heretic, as seen to be attacking their belief system. And they will do intellectual double-back somersaults to basically explain away you and your hoax.
We've learned that there is no hard evidence we've ever been visited by aliens. But next, Naked Science reveals a moment when the scientific world believed we might have made first contact. This is the sound of our universe. It's alive with cosmic noise, a constant barrage of galactic white noise. August 15th, 1977, Ohio State University. This is Project Big Ear. Its aim, to scan the galaxy and listen out for an alien species. It's the middle of the night. As the scientists catch up on their sleep, suddenly the computers pick up a signal. It's coming from somewhere in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, over 200 light-years away. But this is no ordinary signal. There is no known natural phenomenon to explain it. This blip looks like a mark of technology, perhaps a sound of intelligent life. It lasts for 72 seconds and then goes silent. It's so striking, the first scientist to see the computer printout wrote down one word: wow. But the wow signal, as it came to be known, has never been heard again. Researchers recently pointed the dishes of the Very Large Array in New Mexico in the direction of the wow signal, but all they heard was silence. It remains one of astronomy's most thrilling and inexplicable moments. Will it someday, maybe even thousands of years from now, mark the start of a profound new chapter in human life? Or will it be remembered as just another computer malfunction? For now, it's a mystery with thrilling possibilities. And planetary scientist David Grinspoon thinks it may well have been alien in origin.
It remains quite possible that the WOW signal was a genuine detection of some kind of extraterrestrial intelligence. My sort of fantasy scenario for the WOW signal is that it was a snippet of conversation, perhaps between two ships, between two aliens, that wasn't really directed at us. We just happened to, for a second, be in the right spot to eavesdrop on.
Although the WOW signal has never been repeated, there is a chance that aliens are already transmitting and we're just looking in the wrong places. For us to have a realistic chance of finding alien intelligence, we need to scan not thousands of stars, but millions. But how can we achieve that sort of scale? Naked Science next travels to Northern California, to the site of the Allen Array. It's the new permanent home for the SETI Institute's Galactic Sweep. Although currently there are only a few operating, eventually there will be 350 dishes covering this site. All of them able to run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, scanning the stars for signs of intelligent life. The SETI search has been running for the last 2 decades. In that time, thousands of stars have been scanned. With this new array, the SETI Institute will be able to search millions of stars in the next 20 years alone. With that sort of capability, the Institute's senior astronomer, Seth Shostak, is for the first time confident enough to make a prediction for Naked Science.
So given the capabilities of this telescope and how many star systems it's going to be looking at in the next 2 decades, I think that we're going to hear extraterrestrials by the year 2025, and in fact, all the action is in the last 5 years. So my bet is we'll know we're not alone sometime between the year 2020 and the year 2025.
And how will it change us the day we discover we're not alone in the universe?
I suspect this will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest story of all time. I think that if you were a resident of Earth in the 30th century and you look back on the 21st century, you wouldn't remember anything about the wars or the technology or the political infighting or any of that stuff. What you would remember was that's when they finally shattered this ball of isolation that was around this planet. That's when they finally found that there were others out there.
But just how life-changing will a signal from another species be? If, as most scientists agree, they'll never visit us, there's little we'll be able to do about it.
Well, it would be frustrating in a certain sense to learn that they're out there, but we can never have two-way communication because they're so far away. But I think that even that scenario would still have a very profound effect simply because the knowledge would be there, would always be there from that point in history on, that there is somebody out there.
But there are a number of scientists who think we should be very wary of contact with aliens. Professor Stephen Hawking of Cambridge University is one of the world's leading cosmologists. He fears our very existence may be threatened if aliens show up.
I think it would be a disaster. The extraterrestrials would probably be far in advance of us. The history of advanced races meeting more primitive people on this planet is not very happy, and they were the same species. I think we should keep our heads low.
But it may already be too late. As we've already heard, for the last 100 years, we have been transmitting radio signals, and they've been leaking off the planet at the speed of light. One day, if there is intelligent life out there, someone or something will know we are here. But perhaps advanced civilizations will have evolved to the point where conquest and wars are a thing of the past. Let's hope that if they ever come, they come in peace.